A lot of people say having kids is one of the best things that could ever happen to someone. Children bring families so much love and life with their innocence and playfulness. Most parents think it's ideal to have a son and a daughter. This couple has been trying to have a baby girl for many years, and at last, they got pregnant with one. Little did they know that they were in for a surprise. Once Katie and Angelo discovered they were pregnant, they were extremely excited to have a new addition to their growing family. Katie and Angelo had been married for a while by then, and they decided it was a good time to grow their family. The two followed through on their decision by having 2 boys. The parents knew that having 2 healthy sons was a huge blessing, but all the same, Katie and Angelo felt like their family was still missing something deep down. When Katie and Angelo found out Katie was pregnant, they went straight for a checkup at the doctor, wasting no time. When it came to Katie and the baby's health, they didn't want to take any chances. Throughout the early weeks of the pregnancy, it was confirmed by the doctors that the progress Katie was making was healthy. However, one day after Katie had gone for a routine checkup, the doctors had another thing to say. This was the moment that would change the couple's lives forever. When the couple went to see the doctor that day, they expected everything to go just as smoothly as it had been in the past. Well, their doctor, Sean Dangeman, told them Katie had to go to a specialist, which alarmed the couple. This is definitely not what a couple wants to hear when they go see a doctor. They had so many questions they wanted to ask. Was there something wrong? Why did Katie need to see a specialist? Katie and Angelo got pretty nervous since they were scared they were going to get bad news. However, when they asked the doctor for the reason they had to see a specialist, he gave them a simple answer. This was the answer they didn't see coming. Since a pregnant woman had to be taken care of very well and protected, their doctor didn't want to take any risks when it came to Katie's health. He mentioned that he spoke to her and said, "Katie, we belong in the hospital now." The couple didn't hesitate to follow the doctor's orders. They made their way to the hospital to keep both Katie and the baby safe. The doctors explained to the couple that the main reason Katie needed the extra attention was that her pregnancy was considered to be a high-risk one. High-risk pregnancies are capable of harming the baby and the mother as well, so they had to be carefully monitored. If you don't understand why all of a sudden the doctors were being all fussy about Katie's pregnancy, then know that there's a good explanation for it all. This was because she wasn't just expecting one baby. She was expecting more. Katie wasn't pregnant with one baby. She was pregnant with 3. 3 babies. Just imagine having to carry 3 babies all at once. It was definitely the right decision for the doctors to instruct Katie to be at the hospital and get more care. Not only was it all overwhelming, but the situation was dangerous. Despite all the excitement, there was an issue with Katie's pregnancy. 2 of the babies in her womb were sharing only one placenta. This situation is very rare and complicated, so doctors had to keep a close eye on her and the babies. The fact that 2 of the babies were sharing one placenta wasn't the biggest problem, but it did have its disadvantages for the babies. One baby's size was going to be hampered, meaning it wouldn't get to be the same size as the other 2 babies. Still, there were plenty of other possible complications that were listed. This problem paled in comparison to them. During her pregnancy, the problems that came up were pretty serious. One of them was the high probability that the babies would be born prematurely. This is rather common with twins too, but with triplets, it's a much higher risk. The health of their 3 unborn babies was at stake. As time went by, Katie was in her 27th week of the pregnancy. Her stomach was getting very big by then, so she had to be admitted to a hospital to make sure she was having a healthy pregnancy. As the pregnancy progressed, Katie found out things from her doctors, leading her to feel very stressed at times. Even though she knew she had to stay as calm as possible, she found it very difficult sometimes. Katie was getting more and more nervous as she thought about what she had in store in the future with her 3 babies. "We hear a lot of stories," she said during an interview. She said it was hard for her and Angelo not to hear the terrible stories said in the hospital. Katie had a bad feeling that she might not get to welcome all 3 babies she was meant to give birth to. She said, "You know of triplets that don't make it, especially the identical twins. The body absorbs one of them." Stories like that stressed her out, keeping her up at night. In terms of moms like Katie, Sharp Memorial Hospital Perinatal Special Care Unit's Angela Watson went on to explain that the most important tool in these kinds of cases was empathy. In her many years working at the hospital, she's seen that expectant mothers who were confronted by complications just needed others to give them some motivation and help them stay positive. The babies were referred to as A, B, and C. Angelo and Katie could only hope the babies would come out healthy. As time went by, the couple discovered that baby B wasn't getting enough fluids. It's needless to say that the baby was affected by this situation. It ended up being somewhat smaller than the other 2. The doctors were minimizing the risks as best as they could, so they watched Katie very carefully. Until her 32nd week of pregnancy, they kept a close watch on her. They wanted to see all 3 of those babies just as much as everyone in their family. The doctors became so involved with Katie's pregnancy that they felt like they had to do everything they could to help. So what would happen to the babies? After the doctors did everything within their power to keep Katie's pregnancy healthy, she went into labor just 1 day after her 32nd week began. Everyone sighed in relief. This meant that Katie carried the babies successfully without any more complications. Despite the fact that oftentimes it suggested that childbirth should be done in a natural way, Katie's situation required a different approach. Since the doctors wanted to keep the delivery under control, they had her go through a cesarean section. Katie and Angelo had a roller coaster throughout the pregnancy. They were both so happy to find out about her pregnancy, but soon were devastated when they learned about the possible complications. In the end, however, Katie's delivery was a success. All 3 newborns were transferred to an individual team for advanced life support. The minute each baby was delivered, the doctor carefully examined them to make sure the newborns weren't showing signs of any health problems. The doctors went on to help the babies with their breathing and make sure they were stabilized. As the doctors were doing whatever they could to help the triplets and ensure their health, Angelo and Katie were praying. As it turns out, their prayers were answered. All 3 babies were okay and turned out fine. Thanks to the doctors and all the effort they'd put in, the 3 little girls, Trish, Danielle, and Rebecca, were stable. They were then ready to be taken to intensive care. This was where babies were reunited with their parents and could spend their time together. Despite the fact that everyone was relieved to find out that all 3 of the babies were stable, there were still other things to be checked. We still have to remember these babies are small and are predisposed to other complications, their doctor explained. Since the babies were born together, each one needed to be handled carefully and the doctors had to keep a close eye on them. Once Katie had some rest, she was prepared to meet her newborn babies. Angelo helped her by wheeling up her neonatal unit, where the babies were kept under monitoring. This was to make sure nothing else would go wrong. Katie wished for a daughter for so long, so she felt so accomplished to finally have her little girls. Pregnancy is by no means an easy experience. A woman needs to be incredibly strong, both physically and mentally, in order to successfully give birth. Plenty of things can go wrong, but this was a case where everything turned out all right. Everything would have been impossible if the hospital's entire midwife team wouldn't have put in the work and effort that they did. The Sharp Memorial Hospital team deserves all the credit for the successful birth. The situation could have easily ended in a completely different way.